Understanding how to transform objects in Illustrator is a critical skill that you'll need to know. Illustrator has some powerful capabilities when it comes to transforming objects that you'll use time and again when creating your own artwork. Now, I'm beginning this video with the transform.ai file already open on my computer. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you how I would recreate this component using the transform features inside of Illustrator. Now, one of the first places you can go to transform objects is the transform panel. And that can be accessed one of two locations. If I select an object, you'll notice in my control bar, as long as I have enough room up here, as long as my resolution is big enough, you'll see this option. And when I click on that, it's going to show the transform panel. Now, if you're not seeing that up there, just go to your window menu and choose transform from the list. And this is going to show you all the features of the transform panel. You can click this double arrow to see all of the options if you want to. Now, the first thing we can do is we can simply change the position of the object using the X and Y coordinates, as well as the width and height. So, for example, how did I get this shape? Well, what we can do is I can grab my polygon tool. I'm going to start clicking and dragging. And as I'm dragging, I'm going to press the down arrow key on my keyboard until I get a triangle. And I'm going to hold down the shift key before I release that button to draw a triangle. Now in the width field, I can set the width to 1/4 inch and the height to 0.75. And there I've got my shape. So the transform panel can be very, very efficient at doing this. And you also have the ability to rotate and skew or shear in this panel as well. One of the things I love about the transform panel is I can precisely position an object. So if I place one here at 3 inches, it'll just move it to that location. But in the X field or the Y field, after the current position, if I type +1 or plus whatever value I want and hold down Option or Alt when I press return, it'll make a copy at that amount. So it's very, very efficient. But let's take a look at using the transform tools. So I'm going to close the transform panel. And although Illustrator refers to these as the reshaping tools, which are the rotate, reflect, and the scale, shear, and reshape tools, I like to consider the rotate, reflect, and the scale and shear tools as the transformation tools because that's what they really do best. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to zoom in on these shapes. I'm just going to move this path off to the side for now. Now, if I click on this shape, I want to show you how these transformation tools work. If I click on the rotate tool, you'll notice in the dead center of this object that I have a reference point. And that means that whatever I do here is going to transform based on that point. So what you want to do is if you just click and drag, don't click and let go, but click and drag, you're going to pivot this object on that point. And you can see I can rotate it in any direction that I want to. Now I'm going to undo that because I also want to show you if I click up here one time, I'm going to reestablish the transformation point. And now when I rotate, it's going to pivot off of that point. So this reference point applies to all of these tools, the scale, shear, rotate, and reflect tools. Now what I'm going to do here, I'm going to click off of this, and I'm going to show my rulers. So I'm going to go to the View menu, go to Rulers, and choose Show Rulers. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out a guide. So I'm going to select this guy, and I'm going to click on my ruler, and I'm going to drag to the right. And I want to position the ruler right in the middle of this object. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this object, and I'm going to grab my rotate tool. Now, instead of just clicking and dragging, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to hold down the Option key on Mac or the Alt key on Windows, and I'm going to click once right where the bottom of this object and the guide intersects. And that's going to do a couple of things. It's going to establish the transformation point, but it's also going to bring up the rotate dialog box. And the same applies for the scale and shear tools as well. And what I'm going to do here is I want 9 of these objects in a circle. And remember, it's going to transform based on this point. So what I'm going to do here is in that angle field, I'm going to type 360 for 360 degrees in a circle, /9. And when I hit the tab key, it's going to calculate what that is, what that value is going to be, and it's 40 degrees. So I'm going to click the copy button, and that's going to make a copy of this object. Now, if I go to the object menu under transform, I have a function called transform again. And you can see the shortcut is Command D. So I'm just going to press Command D several times until I have the even amount of points around this object. And you can see that now, if I zoom out a little bit, we can see that I've already created this initial shape that we have over here. Now, what I also need to do is I need to create these divider lines that we have here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in, I'm going to move this into position, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to drag this right in the middle to line up with my guide. So I'll just drag that into position. There we go. Now I'm going to do the same thing I did before. What I'm going to do, as you can see, if you look at the reference point, this needs to be a little bit lower. So I'm just going to drop that down. I'm going to nudge it down a little bit. And what I want to do here is I want to transform this based on that center point again. So I'm going to select this triangle again, and I'm going to pull a guide down to here, down to the bottom of that object. And now I'm going to click on this black path, and I'm going to reduce it. Let me zoom in so we can see this a little bit better. And what you might want to do is go to View, Guides, and choose Lock Guides. That way I'm not accidentally clicking on the guide. And I want to select this path, and I'm just going to pull it up to this guide right here. And now using the Rotate tool again, I'm going to Alt or Option click on that selected path. And remember, last time we did 360 divided by 9, but we want this to be positioned starting at this point. Well, if you remember, you have to do a little bit of math here, but the last transformation we did was 40 degrees. And this would be half of that. So I'm going to type 20. And if I hit OK, now that's positioned at the right spot. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do the same thing I did before, Alt or Option click on this point, and I'm going to do 360 divided by 9. And that again is 40 degrees. So if I hit copy, it's going to transform it to the appropriate value. And then I'll just keep transforming this using Command or Control D to get the lines to show up in the dividers or the intersections of these shapes. And you'll see that if I zoom out, I've now pretty much gotten the shape that I'm looking for. And what we can do to get this particular shape the way that it is, we'll just grab our Direct Selection tool, marquee this anchor point, and I'm just going to pull this out to lengthen it. And now we've got the shape that we need. So transforming objects is not difficult in Illustrator, but it does require a little bit of know-how in order to use the transformation tools correctly. Once you get the idea, the possibilities are endless.